I never thought the smell of roasted turkey and cinnamon could break my heart. But that November afternoon, standing in my parents' driveway in the fading light of a cold Ohio evening, I learned that even the warmest traditions can turn ice cold when family decides you're no longer good enough to sit at their table. My name is Dorothy Williams, and I'm 57 years old now. The story I'm about to tell you happened 3 years ago, but I remember every word, every look, every painful silence as if it were yesterday. You see, some moments in life carve themselves so deeply into your soul that time can't soften their edges. This is one of those moments. I grew up in Maplewood, Ohio, a quiet town where everyone knows everyone, where the high school football games are the highlight of Friday nights, and where family is supposed to mean everything. My parents, Robert and Susan Williams, raised me and my younger sister Claire in a modest 2-story house on Elm Street, the kind of place where the porch swing still creaks the same way it did 40 years ago, and the kitchen always smelled like my mother's apple pie. Claire was born when I was 7. I remember holding her tiny hand in the hospital, promising I'd always be her big sister, her protector. We grew up sharing a room, whispering secrets after bedtime, braiding each other's hair before school. But somewhere along the way, as we became adults, something shifted. The sister who once looked up to me started looking down on me instead. Maybe it started when she married young at 23 to a man our parents adored. Michael was handsome, successful, came from a good family. They bought a beautiful house 3 streets away from our childhood home. Claire became the golden child, the daughter who did everything right. And me? I married Tom when I was 25. He was a mechanic, a good man with rough hands and a gentle heart. We didn't have much money, but we had love. At least, I thought we did. The marriage lasted 18 years before Tom left me for a woman he met at work. I was 43, suddenly alone, working 2 jobs just to keep the apartment I could barely afford. My parents were sympathetic at first, but I could see the disappointment in their eyes. Their daughters were supposed to have picture-perfect lives. Claire still did. I didn't. Claire's life seemed to get shinier while mine got dimmer. She had 2 beautiful children, a promotion at the bank where she worked, family vacations to Florida every summer. Meanwhile, I struggled to pay my electric bill some months. I wasn't jealous, truly I wasn't. I was just tired. Bone-deep tired in a way that no amount of sleep could fix. But I still showed up. Every Thanksgiving, every Christmas, every birthday party for my niece and nephew. I brought what I could afford, smiled through the comparisons, pretended not to notice when Claire rolled her eyes at my thrift store sweaters or my beat-up car. Family was family, after all. That's what I told myself every time my heart ached a little more. Then came the Thanksgiving that changed everything. It was early November, about 3 weeks before the holiday. I had just gotten home from my shift at the diner where I waitressed, my feet screaming in pain, when my phone rang. It was my mother. "Dorothy, dear, your father, and I need to talk to you about Thanksgiving," she said, her voice strange, stiff in a way I'd never heard before. "Of course, Mom. What time should I come over? Should I bring my green bean casserole again? Everyone seemed to like it last year." There was a pause. A long, horrible pause that made my stomach drop. "Actually, honey, we think it might be best if you didn't come this year." I laughed. I actually laughed because surely I'd misheard. "What do you mean, Mom? Don't come to Thanksgiving?" "I don't understand." Another pause. Claire spoke to us. "She's very upset about last time. She feels you embarrassed her in front of everyone, and with her new boyfriend coming this year, she just thinks it would be better if it was a smaller gathering." My mind raced back to the previous Thanksgiving. What had I done? I'd been quiet most of the evening, helping in the kitchen, playing with my nephew. Then I remembered. Toward the end of the night, Claire had been talking about her new kitchen renovation, the granite countertops that cost more than I made in 6 months. Someone asked me about my apartment, and I'd mentioned I'd painted the bathroom myself to save money. Claire had given me that look, that pinched expression she wore when she thought I was making her look bad by comparison. "Mom, I didn't embarrass anyone. I just answered a question about my bathroom. You talked about how you couldn't afford to hire a painter, Dorothy." Right in front of Claire's friends. She felt it reflected poorly on the family. The words hit me like a slap. Reflected poorly? I was being honest about my life. That's just it, dear. We all know things have been hard for you, but must you announce it to everyone? Claire works very hard to maintain her reputation, and she's finally found someone new after her divorce. Bradley comes from a very good family, and this Thanksgiving is important. My sister had divorced Michael 2 years earlier. She'd immediately started dating Bradley, a corporate lawyer who wore expensive suits and drove a Mercedes. From what I'd heard through my mother's weekly phone calls, he was exactly what Claire wanted: successful, polished, impressive. So I'm uninvited because I'm an embarrassment? My voice cracked on the last word. Don't be dramatic, Dorothy. It's just one Thanksgiving. We can see you another time. Mom, we've never missed Thanksgiving. Not in 57 years. This is our family tradition. Claire is family too, and she needs our support right now. Try to understand. But I didn't understand. I couldn't understand how the little girl I'd protected, loved, and cheered for had grown into someone who found my struggles shameful. I couldn't understand how my parents could choose sides. And I couldn't understand why being poor had become a crime in my own family. I hung up the phone and sat in my tiny apartment as darkness fell outside. The silence pressed in on me from all sides. No husband to comfort me. No children of my own to call. Just me alone, with the crushing weight of rejection from the only family I had left. The next few weeks were a blur of hurt and confusion. I kept hoping my phone would ring, hoping my mother would call back and say there'd been a mistake, that of course I was welcome. But the call never came. November crept toward Thanksgiving, and I made no plans. What was there to plan for? I told my coworkers at the diner I'd be spending Thanksgiving alone by choice, preferring peace and quiet. They believed me because I smiled when I said it, and I'd learned to be a good actress over the years. You had to be when your life fell apart, but you still had to show up for your shift. Thanksgiving morning arrived cold and gray. I woke up in my apartment, stared at the ceiling, and tried to convince myself this was just another Thursday. I made coffee, considered cooking something special for myself, then decided there was no point. I'd just heat up a frozen dinner and watch television. Maybe I'd call an old friend. Maybe I'd just go back to bed. But around noon, something inside me shifted. A spark of defiance, maybe. Or desperation. I got dressed in my nicest clothes, a navy blue dress I'd worn to a friend's daughter's wedding 2 years ago. I did my hair and makeup carefully. And then I got in my old car and drove to my parents' house. I don't know what I expected. Maybe I thought if they saw me, really saw me standing there, they'd realize how cruel they'd been. Maybe I thought I could apologize for existing in a way that embarrassed my sister. Maybe I just needed to see for myself that they'd really meant it. The driveway was full of cars when I arrived. I recognized Claire's sleek black sedan and a silver Mercedes that must have belonged to Bradley. My parents' friends from church had parked on the street. Through the living room window, I could see people moving around, laughing, holding wine glasses. The warm glow of family and belonging shone through every window while I stood outside in the cold. I walked up to the front door and knocked. My heart pounded so hard I could hear it in my ears. The door opened, and my father stood there, his face going pale when he saw me. "Dorothy, what are you doing here?" "I'm here for Thanksgiving, Dad. I thought maybe we could talk. I miss you. I miss all of you." His eyes darted back into the house nervously. "Honey, we talked about this. Today isn't a good day. Dad, please. I'm your daughter too. Can't we just—" "Robert? Who's at the door?" My mother's voice called from inside. Before my father could answer, Claire appeared behind him. She looked beautiful in a burgundy dress, her hair perfectly styled, her makeup flawless. And her expression when she saw me was pure ice. "You can't be serious," she said. "Mom explicitly told you not to come. Claire, I just want to be with my family on Thanksgiving. Can't we please?" "No." She cut me off sharply. "You always do this. You always try to make everything about you and your problems. This day is about me and Bradley. It's important, and I won't let you ruin it." "I'm not trying to ruin anything. I just want to sit at the table with my family. Your presence is embarrassing, Dorothy. Don't you get that? Bradley's parents are here. His colleagues are here. And you want to show up in that old dress, probably ready to talk about your waitressing job or your landlord or whatever sad story you're living through now. You make the rest of us look bad." Each word was a dagger. I looked past her to my mother, who stood in the hallway wringing her hands, but saying nothing. My father avoided my eyes. "I didn't know existing was a crime," I said quietly. "I didn't know my life was something to be ashamed of." "It's not about shame, it's about appropriateness," Claire snapped. "Some of us have worked hard to build respectable lives. We shouldn't have to apologize for not wanting to be dragged down by someone who gave up." Gave up? My husband left me, Claire. I didn't give up, I survived. I'm still surviving, every single day, the best way I know how. And that's very sad for you, but it's not our problem. You need to leave. Now. I stood there, frozen, searching my sister's face for any trace of the girl who used to hold my hand, who used to ask me to check under her bed for monsters, who used to tell me I was her hero. But that girl was gone. In her place was a stranger wearing my sister's face, a stranger who saw me as nothing more than an inconvenient reminder that life didn't always go according to plan. "Claire, that's enough." A male voice spoke from behind her. A tall man in an expensive sweater stepped forward. This must be Bradley, the boyfriend, the reason I'd been erased from my own family's Thanksgiving. He had kind eyes, I noticed. Kind eyes that looked at me with something that might have been pity or might have been understanding. "Bradley, don't," Claire warned. "This doesn't concern you." "Actually, it does concern me if I'm the reason someone's being excluded from family." He looked directly at me. "You must be Dorothy. Claire's told me about you." "I'm sure she has," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "She told me you raised her like a second mother when your parents were both working. She told me you taught her to ride a bike, helped her with her homework, stayed up with her when she was scared during thunderstorms. She told me you were the first person she called when she got her acceptance letter to college." Claire's face flushed. "Bradley, stop." But he continued, his voice gentle but firm. "And I've heard how these past few years have been difficult for you. Divorce, financial struggles. That must have been incredibly hard." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. "I grew up with money," Bradley said. "My parents, my grandparents, everything was always easy for me. And you know what? It made me entitled. It made me forget that life isn't easy for everyone, that struggle doesn't mean failure, and that a person's worth isn't measured by their bank account or their job title." "Bradley, please," Claire said again, her voice rising. He turned to her. "Claire, I care about you. But I can't be part of this. Your sister drove here on Thanksgiving, hoping to be with her family. And you're treating her like she's done something wrong by having a hard life. That's not the woman I thought you were." The hallway went silent. Through the doorway, I could see other guests had gathered, watching this scene unfold. My mother's friends from church, Bradley's parents, people I didn't know. All of them witnessing my humiliation. Claire's eyes blazed. "How dare you take her side? You don't know anything about her. She's always been like this, always playing the victim, always making the rest of us feel guilty for succeeding." "That's not true," I said, finding my voice. "I never asked you to feel guilty. I only ever wanted you to remember that I'm your sister. That I love you. That I've always loved you, even when you made it very clear you didn't love me back." My mother finally spoke. "Girls, please. The neighbors." "The neighbors?" I turned to her. "That's what you're worried about? Not that you're choosing one daughter over the other? Not that you're letting Claire kick me out of our family?" "We're not kicking you out," my father said weakly. "We're just asking for a little space." Space. The word came out as a broken laugh. "You've given me 3 years of space. 3 years of watching Claire get all your attention, all your pride, while I get lectures about being more discreet about my struggles. 3 years of feeling like I have to apologize for the fact that my life isn't perfect." "Your life is a disaster because you make bad choices," Claire shot back. "You married a mechanic instead of going to college. You didn't save money. You didn't plan for the future. And now you want us to pretend like you're not a cautionary tale." The cruelty in her voice broke something inside me. Not just my heart, which had already been cracked and glued back together too many times, but something deeper. The part of me that had kept hoping, kept believing that family meant something, that blood ties couldn't be completely severed. "You're right," I said softly. "I made mistakes. I trusted the wrong man. I didn't have the same opportunities you had. But I'm still here, Claire. I'm still standing. And I would never, ever treat you the way you're treating me right now, no matter what mistakes you made. Bradley stepped closer to me. Ma'am, I apologize for this situation. If I had known my presence would cause your family to exclude you, I would have suggested we all go out to dinner instead, somewhere neutral where everyone could feel welcome. It's not your fault, I told him. You seem like a good man. I hope you know what you're getting into. I looked at my parents one last time. My father couldn't meet my eyes. My mother dabbed at her face with a tissue, but whether from genuine emotion or just embarrassment at the scene, I couldn't tell. I'm going to go now, I said. Not because you asked me to, but because I deserve better than this. I deserve to spend Thanksgiving with people who actually want me there. I turned and walked back to my car. Behind me, I heard Bradley say something in a low voice, heard Claire's sharp response, heard my mother crying. But I didn't look back. I got in my car, started the engine with shaking hands, and drove away from my childhood home. I made it 3 blocks before I had to pull over because I couldn't see through my tears. I sat in my car on a residential street decorated with fall wreaths and happy families visible through windows, and I cried like I hadn't cried since the day Tom left. But these tears were different. These tears weren't just about loss. They were about betrayal. About realizing that the people who were supposed to love you unconditionally could actually turn their backs on you when you needed them most. I don't know how long I sat there. Eventually, my phone rang. For a foolish moment, I hoped it was my mother calling to apologize. But it was my friend Sarah, another waitress from the diner. Dorothy? I know you said you wanted to be alone today, but nobody should be alone on Thanksgiving. My sister's hosting dinner, and there's plenty of food. We'd love to have you. I almost said no. Pride, shame, exhaustion, all of it made me want to just go home and hide. But something in Sarah's voice, genuine warmth with no judgment, made me say yes instead. Sarah's sister lived in a small apartment not much bigger than mine. The furniture was old, the carpet worn, but when I walked in, the smell of roasted turkey and the sound of laughter wrapped around me like a warm blanket. There were 8 people crammed around a table meant for 6. Sarah's sister and her husband. Their 3 kids. Sarah's elderly mother. Another coworker from the diner and her boyfriend. Everyone, this is my friend Dorothy, Sarah announced. Dorothy, welcome to the madhouse. They made room for me, squeezing in an extra chair. The turkey was a little dry, the mashed potatoes came from a box, and we drank wine from mismatched glasses. Nobody was dressed fancy. Nobody pretended to be anything they weren't. And when Sarah's mother asked about my day, and I couldn't help the tears that came, nobody looked away in embarrassment. Sarah held my hand. Her sister brought me tissues. And they let me cry. Later, after I'd told them everything, Sarah's brother-in-law said something I'll never forget. Family isn't always blood. Sometimes family is the people who show up for you when nobody else will. We finished dinner late into the evening. I helped wash dishes alongside Sarah and her sister, and we laughed about customers at the diner, about burnt pies and terrible tippers. For a few hours, I forgot about my sister's cold eyes and my parents' rejection. For a few hours, I was just Dorothy, someone worth knowing, worth including, worth loving. When I finally got home that night, exhausted but somehow lighter, I found a text message on my phone. It was from a number I didn't recognize. Dorothy, this is Bradley. I got your number from Claire's phone. I want you to know what happened after you left. I told Claire and your parents that I couldn't be with someone who treats family that way. I left the dinner. I don't know if this helps or makes things worse, but I thought you should know that someone stood up for you today. You deserved better than what happened. I hope you had a good Thanksgiving despite everything. You seem like a remarkable woman, and I'm sorry your family can't see that. I read the message 3 times, then a 4th. A stranger had defended me when my own family wouldn't. A man I'd met for 5 minutes on my worst day had seen my worth when the people who'd known me my whole life had decided I had none. I didn't respond to his message. What could I say? But I saved it. And sometimes, on the hardest days, I would read it again and remember that I wasn't invisible. That my struggles didn't make me worthless. That somewhere out there, Someone had looked at my life and seen a person fighting to survive rather than a failure who deserved to be hidden away. The next few months were painful in ways I hadn't expected. My mother called once, a few days after Thanksgiving, but the conversation was brief and awkward. She asked how I was doing, mentioned that Claire and Bradley had broken up, said she hoped we could all have dinner sometime soon. But there was no apology, no acknowledgement of how deeply they'd hurt me. Just a vague hope that I'd forget it had happened and everything could go back to normal. But I didn't forget. I couldn't forget. And I realized that normal had never been good for me. Normal meant accepting crumbs of affection while my sister got the whole feast. Normal meant staying quiet about my pain so I wouldn't make anyone uncomfortable. Normal meant shrinking myself down to fit into spaces that were never really meant for me. I stopped calling my mother every week. I stopped sending birthday cards to my niece and nephew, knowing Claire would probably throw them away. I stopped driving past my childhood home and wondering what they were doing without me. Instead, I started building a new life with people who actually wanted me in it. Sarah and I became closer friends. I started attending her church, a small congregation where nobody cared what car you drove or what neighborhood you lived in. I volunteered at a food bank on weekends, helping other people who were struggling, who understood what it felt like to be judged for circumstances often beyond your control. And slowly, painfully, I began to heal. Not all at once. Not in a straight line. There were still nights when I lay awake, replaying that scene on my parents' doorstep, wondering what I could have done differently. There were still moments when I saw families together and felt the ache of what I'd lost. But I also started to feel something new. Something that felt almost like relief. Because the truth was, trying to be good enough for people who had already decided you weren't had been exhausting. Pretending my sister's cruelty was just her being stressed, that my parents' favoritism was just in my head, that I was too sensitive, all of it had worn me down to nothing. Now, freed from that burden, I could finally breathe. Christmas came and went without a word from my family. My birthday in February passed unmarked by any card or call from them. And while it hurt, it also confirmed what I'd suspected. They hadn't really wanted me there even before that Thanksgiving. They'd just been going through the motions, including me out of obligation rather than love. In March, I ran into my mother at the grocery store. We stood in the cereal aisle, two women who looked alike but had become strangers, and made awkward small talk about the weather. She mentioned Claire had started dating someone new, someone from her work. She asked if I was still waitressing. I said yes, and I could see the disappointment flash across her face before she hid it behind a smile. "We should have lunch sometime," she said, the way people do when they don't really mean it. "Maybe," I replied, equally insincere. We parted ways, and I realized I felt nothing. Not anger, not sadness, just a vast emptiness where my family used to be. And maybe that was okay. Maybe that was part of healing too, not caring anymore about people who had never really cared about me. Spring turned to summer, and I found myself settling into a new rhythm. I picked up a second job at a bookstore, something I'd always wanted to do. It didn't pay much, but I loved being surrounded by stories, helping customers find books that might change their lives the way books had sometimes saved mine. One Saturday in July, I was shelving books in the fiction section when someone said my name. I turned around, and there was Bradley. He looked different than he had on that terrible Thanksgiving. More casual in jeans and a t-shirt. Somehow more real. He smiled tentatively. "Dorothy, I wasn't sure you'd remember me." "Of course I remember you. You're the man who walked away from Thanksgiving dinner to defend someone you'd never met." He shrugged. It seemed like the right thing to do, though it didn't make me very popular with Claire or her parents. "I heard you and Claire broke up." "I'm sorry." "Don't be. That situation showed me who she really was. And honestly, I dodged a bullet." He paused. "How have you been?" We talked for over an hour, standing in the fiction aisle while other customers browsed around us. He told me he'd started volunteering at a legal aid clinic, helping people who couldn't afford lawyers. I told him about the food bank, about my new church, about slowly rebuilding a life that felt authentic rather than performative. "You seem happy," he said finally. Or at least happier. "I am," I realized. "It's strange." I lost my family, but I don't feel as lost as I did when I was still trying to fit into their version of who I should be. He nodded like he understood. Sometimes the people who are supposed to love us actually hold us back. Letting go is painful, but it's also freeing. Before he left, he asked if he could take me to coffee sometime. Not a date, he clarified quickly, just as friends. People who understood what it was like to walk away from relationships that were supposed to matter. I said yes. Coffee turned into dinner. Dinner turned into long walks along the river that ran through Maplewood. And somewhere in those quiet conversations, as summer faded into fall, I found something I thought I'd lost forever, the ability to trust that someone could see my struggles and not turn away. Bradley and I didn't fall in love. Our connection was different than that. Deeper in some ways, less complicated in others. He became the friend I'd needed that Thanksgiving day. The person who showed up, who listened, who never made me feel like my pain was an inconvenience. When the second Thanksgiving approached, a full year after the one that had shattered my family, Bradley asked what my plans were. I told him Sarah had invited me to her sister's house again, and he asked if I'd mind if he joined me. You don't have to spend Thanksgiving with your waitress friend and her mismatched family, I teased. Actually, he said seriously, I can't think of anywhere I'd rather be. So we went together to Sarah's sister's apartment, where the turkey was still a little dry and the mashed potatoes still came from a box. Bradley fit right in, laughing with Sarah's brother-in-law about football, letting the kids show him their toys, helping with dishes afterward. And I watched him and realized that maybe family really was about who showed up, not who shared your blood. Late that night, after we'd said goodbye to everyone and Bradley had driven me home, he walked me to my apartment door. Thank you for letting me be part of your Thanksgiving, he said. Thank you for wanting to be part of it. He hesitated, then said, I saw your sister a few weeks ago, at a restaurant downtown. She was with her new boyfriend, and she looked miserable. When she saw me, she looked away. I think she knows she made a mistake, pushing you out. Maybe, I said. Or maybe she's just embarrassed that you witnessed how cruel she could be. Do you think you'll ever talk to them again? Your family. I thought about it, really thought about it. I don't know. Part of me hopes that someday they'll realize what they threw away. That they'll apologize, really apologize, and we can rebuild something new. But another part of me knows that even if they did, it would never be what it was. The trust is broken. The illusion that family means unconditional love, that's shattered. And if they never reach out? If they never apologize? Then I'll be okay, I said, and I meant it. Because I've learned I don't need their approval to have value. I don't need them to see my worth for me to have worth. It would be nice to have them back in my life, but I don't need them. Not anymore. He hugged me then, a long tight hug that felt like understanding and acceptance and all the things I'd been starving for. When he pulled back, his eyes were bright. You're one of the strongest people I've ever met, Dorothy Williams. I hope you know that. After he left, I went inside and made myself tea, sitting in my small living room that I'd slowly decorated with thrift store finds and clearance items. It wasn't much. My apartment would never grace the pages of a home magazine. My life would never make my parents proud in the way Claire's did. But it was mine. Honestly, authentically mine. Built from broken pieces and held together with hard work and hope and the love of people who'd chosen to be in my life rather than being obligated by blood. 3 years have passed now since that terrible Thanksgiving. I'm 60 years old, still waitressing, still working at the bookstore, still living in my small apartment. My life hasn't magically transformed into something glossy and enviable. I'm still struggling financially. I still have moments of loneliness. I still wonder sometimes what it would be like to have my family back. But I also have Sarah and her family, who invite me to every holiday. I have Bradley, who became one of my closest friends, who reminds me that my past doesn't define my future. I have my church community, where people know my story and love me anyway. I have the people at the food bank, who hug me every week and tell me I make a difference. I never heard from my parents after that day in the grocery store. No birthday calls, no Christmas cards, no attempts to bridge the gap that had grown too wide. Sometimes I drive past my childhood home and wonder if they ever think about me, if they ever regret choosing one daughter over the other. But I don't stop. I don't knock on the door. I've learned that some bridges, once burned, can't be rebuilt. And maybe that's okay. Claire sent me a message last month through Facebook. Just one line, "I've been thinking about you lately. Hope you're well." I read it several times, trying to decode what she really meant. Was it an olive branch? An apology in disguise? Or just a way to ease her guilt? I thought about responding, thought about opening that door one more time. But then I remembered standing on my parents' doorstep, remembered her cold eyes, remembered being told my existence was embarrassing. I deleted the message. Maybe that makes me unforgiving. Maybe it means I'm holding on to anger I should release. But it also means I'm protecting myself from people who've already proven they'll hurt me when it's convenient for them. And after 60 years of putting everyone else's feelings before my own, I think I've earned the right to put myself first. My life isn't what I imagined it would be when I was young. I didn't get the happy marriage, the beautiful house, the perfect family. I got something messier, harder, more real. I got knocked down over and over again, and I got back up every single time. I got rejected by the people who were supposed to love me most, and I survived it. And maybe that's the real story here. Not the betrayal, not the pain, not the loss, but the survival. The choosing to keep going even when it would have been easier to give up. The finding of new family when the old one failed me. The discovery that my worth wasn't determined by their opinion of me. Sometimes I think about that Thanksgiving, about standing on that doorstep in the cold. I think about how small I felt, how worthless, how completely erased. And then I think about now, about the life I've built from the ruins they left me in. I think about the people who've chosen to love me, about the difference I've made volunteering, about the customers at the bookstore who remember my name and ask for my recommendations. I'm not rich. I'm not successful by society's standards. My sister probably still thinks of me as an embarrassment, if she thinks of me at all. But I'm here. I'm surviving. And on my good days, I'm even thriving in small, quiet ways that nobody would put in a Christmas card, but that mean everything to me. If I could go back and talk to the Dorothy who stood on that doorstep 3 years ago, the one who was so broken she could barely breathe, I would tell her this: you're going to be okay. Not right away. Not easily. But you're going to find people who see your struggles as proof of your strength rather than signs of your failure. You're going to learn that family isn't always blood, and that losing people who never really valued you isn't actually a loss at all. You're going to discover that you're so much stronger than you ever knew. And I would tell her that life doesn't always give you the story you wanted. Sometimes it gives you something different, something harder, something that breaks you open and forces you to rebuild from scratch. But in that rebuilding, you might find pieces of yourself you never knew existed. You might discover that the quiet life you were ashamed of is actually full of more genuine love and connection than the performative family gatherings you were excluded from. I don't know what the future holds. Maybe someday my family will reach out with real apologies and genuine desire to reconnect. Maybe they'll never think of me again. Maybe I'll stay in this apartment waitressing until I'm too old to carry plates. Maybe something better is waiting around a corner I haven't turned yet. But whatever happens, I know this. I'm not that broken woman on the doorstep anymore. I'm someone who learned to walk away from people who diminished her light. I'm someone who found family in unexpected places. I'm someone who survived rejection from the people who were supposed to love her most and came out the other side, still capable of love, still capable of hope, still capable of believing that she matters. Because I do matter. Not because of my job or my bank account or whether my life looks good from the outside. But because I'm a human being who's fought hard for every good thing in her life. Because I show up for people who need help. Because I've turned my pain into compassion for others who are struggling. Because I'm still here, still trying, still believing that tomorrow might be better than today. That Thanksgiving, I thought my family's rejection would destroy me. In some ways, it did destroy the person I used to be, the one who believed blood was thicker than water, who thought family was forever, who assumed love was a given rather than a choice. But from those ruins, something new grew. Something quieter but more resilient. Something that understood that the people who walk away from you are often doing you a favor, making room for the people who will run toward you instead. So if you're reading this and you've ever been told you're too much or not enough, if you've ever been excluded from a table you thought was yours by right, if you've ever stood on a doorstep in the cold while warmth and laughter happened without you, I want you to know, you're going to be okay. It won't feel like it at first. You'll cry until you're empty. You'll question everything about yourself. You'll wonder what's so wrong with you that even your own family couldn't love you. But those are lies that hurt tells you. The truth is simpler and harder. Some people aren't capable of loving you the way you deserve. Some families are more concerned with appearances than with the people behind them. Some love is conditional on your success, your status, your ability to make them look good. And when you discover that truth, when it breaks your heart into pieces you're not sure you can reassemble, you have a choice. You can spend the rest of your life trying to earn love from people who